All right, Sam Darnold, the former 49er, a year removed from playing with the 49ers. I wouldn't even say a year. It's only been a few months since Sam Darnold was Brock Purdy's backup. He's going to be leading the Minnesota Vikings against the San Francisco 49ers in week 2. I went through this in the morning. The morning show was more of a look at the quarterback matchup and the fact that it all just seems scripted at this point. After week 1, adjusted EPA per play, expected points added per play, the top quarterback in the NFL is Sam Darnold, and number 2 is Brock Purdy. So thank you, statistics gods. Thank you to the NFL schedule makers. We get to see 1 against 2 in Minnesota this weekend. But the 49ers helped rehabilitate Sam Darnold's career. Kyle Shanahan actually talked about the year that he did get to spend with Sam Darnold. And why don't we actually listen in on that right now, just to set some background. We'll also be able to hear from Sam in Minnesota on what it means to face the 49ers.
Loved having Sam here. He was an awesome guy. He's been that way everywhere he's been, and we found it out personally here. But always liked Sam before he got here, just his talent level from college and what he had seen in the NFL, and was exactly as good as advertised. I mean, he's such a good athlete, so tough, can make any throw, and really enjoyed working with him. I thought he got better throughout the year. I know he was always ready to get more opportunities in the games if something bad happened, and fortunately for Brock, we didn't have to do that till the last week, but it was really good having him here as number 2. Yeah, I did. I think just, Sam had been in a lot of different offenses and a few different teams and stuff, so I think just the more he always could make plays and stuff, but the more he got used to what we were asking, and it's hard when you ask some people to do stuff that they haven't done before. Because sometimes you got to get worse before you get better. But Sam came in with such a good mindset. He was so detailed in what he did, really never wavered, and really tried to pick stuff up. And I thought he came in really good, and I thought he got better throughout the year.
So let's go through the Sam Darnold career progression. Drafted very, very high by the New York Jets. That obviously flamed out. Then he was traded to the Carolina Panthers. He also did not perform well there until the final 6 games of the 2022 season. The numbers for Sam Darnold, efficiency-wise, were top 7, top 8 numbers over the course of the final 6 games of 2022. Now, that was without Christian McCaffrey. It was after the Panthers had traded Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers. So it was really interesting because I think that a lot of what he put on tape, Sam, in that 2022 season to close for Carolina, a lot of that film helped convince Kyle Shanahan that he was worth taking a backup flyer on for 2023. So enter that 2023 year. Brock Purdy is coming off of the elbow surgery because he suffered the torn UCL in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. The 49ers have another quarterback. You may have heard of him, named Trey Lance, who's coming off the fractured ankle. So they have 2 quarterbacks who had suffered season-ending injuries on the roster. That's before we get into Jimmy Garoppolo, who wasn't on the roster anymore. But the 49ers had to figure out what was next. And when you got 2 guys coming off of serious injuries that required surgery, you got to bring in somebody who's not coming off of surgery, somebody who's healthy, to make sure that you're fortified enough, at least for the offseason, at the position. So that's why the 49ers signed Sam Darnold to a deal that was heavily incentivized, a lot of incentives in his deal in the 2023 offseason. They knew that Purdy was not going to be back until training camp, but they knew that Trey Lance, who had been hurt in week 2 of that 2022 season, was going to be ready much sooner. So Lance returned. This came after Darnold signed, and Darnold and Lance began competing. It was unclear when Purdy would come back and what kind of shape Purdy would be in when he came back. But the understanding was that if Purdy was back to anywhere near his 2022 form, he would be the starter. That actually ended up happening, right? Purdy did return for training camp, and then he just took the show and grabbed it by the horns in week 1. And that was against Pittsburgh, and he never looked back. So there was never any doubt about Brock Purdy returning from that elbow injury after he did take the playing field again for the 49ers. But before that, Darnold and Lance battled it out for the number 2 job. Darnold ended up beating out Lance. So the 49ers traded Trey Lance to the Dallas Cowboys. Darnold was Purdy's backup for the 2023 season, and the 49ers didn't really need to use him because Brock Purdy stayed relatively healthy. The biggest injury scare for Brock Purdy actually came against the Minnesota Vikings at US Bank Stadium, where the 49ers are about to head for Sunday's game. He suffered a concussion late, although it wasn't diagnosed until the next day. But Purdy had been playing great football prior to the quarterback sneak where we think he suffered the concussion. The link has never been completely fully made, but when you watch the tape and you see the big helmet-to-helmet hit, it seems that that's where it might have happened. But before that play, Brock Purdy had been very, very good. After that play, he threw 2 late interceptions, and the 49ers lost the game 22-17 by 5 points to Minnesota. However, since the concussion was not diagnosed until the next day, Sam Darnold did not play. Darnold did not get extended action for the 49ers as a starter until week 18 against the Rams, where he played well, but the 49ers were resting their other starters. So almost all of the work that Sam Darnold did to resuscitate his image, because he signed for $10 million with the Minnesota Vikings, which was more than the 49ers were able to pay him. San Francisco wanted to keep him, but almost all of the work that Sam Darnold did was behind the scenes. The 49ers loved what they saw behind the scenes. And then I'm sure that Kevin O'Connell, who is Minnesota's coach, heard about some of the work that was happening with Sam Darnold behind the scenes. And that made them confident enough to pay Sam Darnold $10 million for this season. Anyway, let's hear from Sam. This is from a Minnesota Vikings press conference. Sam Darnold talking about his time with the 49ers and his excitement to face his former team.
Obviously a really good test this week, going up against San Fran. Really excited. Yeah, just a really good opportunity for us to go out there and play good football and take it one step at a time.
What did your year with the 49ers last year kind of mean to you, just on and off the field?
Yeah, it was huge. Just being able to, learn how they do things over there. Not only schematically, but just as an organization. It was great to be able to be a part of for a year, and to be able to have the season that we had last year was amazing to be a part of. And yeah.
So going through that defense, one of the most challenging parts of trying to get through that.
Yeah, I think just the physicality that they play with, and the speed that they play with. Obviously, they have a great scheme, and they play it really, really well. We're looking forward to the opportunity, and we'll be ready.
Sam, do you think that last year will help in any way for you to know how to attack the defense?
Yeah, I think, just seeing them every day, I think it definitely helps. Just experience being able to see the defense. But, I'm sure, they'll have some different things. Again, like I said, really excited about the opportunity.
I think you mentioned earlier in camp how you really kind of benefited from preparation standpoint, being with San Francisco, and kind of picked up some good stuff there. What did that really look like to you, like each week with Brock?
Yeah, I mean, I learned so much, last year. Just what we did every single week, like I said, week in, week out, just being able to learn every single game plan, and study throughout the week. I think that was the biggest takeaway that I had, with all the different things that we had to know as quarterbacks going into a game, being able to study and know all of it, without really having the reps throughout the week, being a backup and being ready to go whenever my number was called. And I think I learned a ton about myself last year, and learned a lot about football last year as well.
Well, what a cool close to that clip. Sam Darnold said he learned a ton about himself and a ton about football last year. And obviously, we have seen the reports coming out of Minnesota and training camp. We saw the first game. I get it. It was against the New York Giants. But you don't just put up numbers like this in the NFL like Darnold did last week with zero skill. He obviously has a lot of talent. And I think he's reining that talent into skill, and the 49ers helped him do it. I call it 49ers QBU. Being in the same room as Brock Purdy definitely helped out Sam Darnold. And now we can talk about this next game against the 49ers, which will not be as easy for him as the game against the New York Giants. What is Sam Darnold working with? Well, last season, the Minnesota Vikings had the third best pass block win rate in the NFL. Pass block win rate is tracked by ESPN. If a line holds a pass block successfully for 2.5 seconds or more, it's considered a winning rep. And the Vikings were number 3 in the entire league last season. They've got one of the best left tackles in the game. Not the best, because the best in the game is in a 49ers uniform. But Christian Darrisaw is a really, really good young player for the Minnesota Vikings. And he's going to be working against Bosa and Leonard Floyd. Bosa and Floyd are going to share, split time between different sides of the offensive line. So sometimes you're going to see Bosa rush against Darrisaw at left tackle. Other times Bosa is going to rush against Brian O'Neill, who's Minnesota's right tackle, who's also a solid player, but not quite as good as Christian Darrisaw, who's near the top of the heap there when it comes to tackle efficiency. The Vikings line was very effective against the 49ers in the win last season. They've got Garrett Bradbury at center. Ed Ingram is the right guard. And Blake Brandel is the left guard. Brandel coming off a really good game against the New York Giants. The 49ers played the Jets. And it was interesting because San Francisco, in facing the Jets, faced a revamped offensive line. The Jets were terrible in 2023, but they replaced their line with the four of the 5 starters were new when they faced the 49ers. So that was a big storyline entering last week. How would Tyron Smith do against Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd? How would Morgan Moses, the former Raven, do against Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd? How would the interior do? I think the 49ers ultimately got the best out of the Jets. They forced New York to play it quick. Aaron Rodgers averaged 2.33 seconds from snap to release. Sam Darnold had way more time than that against the New York Giants last week. I think that the game plan for the Vikings and Sam Darnold is going to have to be very different against the 49ers because they ain't the Giants. I know that for sure. Most teams that play the 49ers end up going quick release. 49ers have to be really patient, their defensive linemen, early in the game because they know they're not going to get many sack opportunities. And then, especially while the run is still a possibility for opposing teams. But then they try to snuff out the quarterbacks in sack opportunities later in the game once they build a lead, once the opponents have to go to more of a drop back game. Minnesota is going to try to avoid getting it to that point because they have a solid run game. Nick Bosa was talking about it today. The Vikings gashed the 49ers last year on a few runs that really set the tone for that game, which ultimately ended in that 49ers loss. And Minnesota has added Aaron Jones, a really good running back. We saw Aaron Jones with a big run against the 49ers in the postseason last year for the Green Bay Packers. He's no longer with the Packers. He stays in the NFC North, stays in that division, and now he is with the Vikings. So beware of Minnesota's run game because it is solid. We can go to Ben Baldwin's website right here, make this a little bit bigger. I've highlighted the Minnesota Vikings and sorted this by run. They were number 10 in EPA per play last season. So, actually, this is their 10. This is this year. After week 1, they're number 10. Let me open up 2023. We'll get back to where Minnesota was. I forgot that this website is sorting by 2024 already because we've started the 2024 season. The reason I caught that is because the 49ers were number 7. And I'm like, wait, they finished number 1 last year. So 49ers in EPA per play, number 7 in the run game. I'm trying to find the Vikings now. The Vikings against the 49ers last year, I want to pull up the stats of that football game because San Francisco, that was one of our first signs that the 49ers run defense. I mean, we had a sign against the Browns too the week before, but this was one of the first signs that the 49ers run defense was not living up to standard. This was week 7, I believe, of the 2023 season. It was Monday Night Football. the Vikings, and I could put this up on the NFL stat site. That's actually the Ben Baldwin site. Let's put this up here. Here you go. NFL stat site. We've got the Vikings in the first half. Alexander Madison. Yeah, he was at like 4.9 per carry. They had both Cam Akers and Alexander Madison running fairly well in the first half. And then in the second half, I think that they got a little bit away from it, which is why the carry numbers weren't that high for Minnesota. But I do remember a couple big runs in the first half from Madison actually setting the table for Kirk Cousins to just carve the 49ers up. 35 of 45, 378 yards. I mean, that was a bad pass defense performance from the 49ers. And it started with the runs early in that first half that got the 49ers destabilized. There was that cover 0 play last year right before halftime. Do you guys remember that? I think San Francisco wins that game if Steve Wilkes doesn't call cover 0 with like 14, 15 seconds remaining in the first half. The throw hits Jordan Addison from Kirk Cousins. He scores a touchdown, rips the ball away from Charvarius Ward. Mooney was very upset in the locker room after that game and did not go the 49ers way. Didn't speak to us in the locker room after that game because he was so upset. So that was tough for San Francisco because between that and the Purdy concussion, they felt that they should have won that game. They ended up losing that game 22-17. So the Vikings feel they have a good run game, 10th in efficiency after the first week. Aaron Jones is now the running back, and they obviously have a very good receiver, the best in the game in Justin Jefferson. If you watch the Netflix series on receiver, you got to know Justin Jefferson a little bit better. Kyle Shanahan was explaining why Jefferson is so good today. And a lot of it is that he can get into and out of cuts without slowing down. He presents a tremendous challenge to how the 49ers are going to align defensively. And Nick Sorensen was really, really good in week 1. He made a lot of adjustments, and the Jets didn't really do anything outside of the free play after that touchdown drive early in the game. And it's because they tightened things up. Nick Sorensen tightened things up on the back end. Steve Wilkes did not make good adjustments against Minnesota last year. 49ers, I think, had a first drive interception in that game. I think it was Dre Greenlaw with the first drive interception. No, it was Charvarius Ward. Yeah, Charvarius Ward had that first drive interception against the Vikings, but then Christian McCaffrey fumbled the ball away. And then from that point on, Kirk Cousins completed 35 of 45 passes. If Sam Darnold can even come close to approximating that, it's going to be a long afternoon for the 49ers, who, by the way, have not won in Minnesota since 1992. 92. Steve Young, Jerry Rice, John Taylor. I think Rich Gannon was the quarterback for Minnesota in 92. I think they won 20-17, the 49ers did. Ever since then, Minnesota, whether it be the old Metrodome or the new US Bank Stadium, which is one of the nicest facilities in the NFL, ever since then, going to Minnesota has been a house of horrors for the 49ers. There was the Brett Favre, Greg Jennings game in 2009 where Favre threw a touchdown with 2 seconds left to beat the 49ers, a miraculous type of play. Harbaugh's 49ers lost in Minnesota in 2012. That was tough. I think it was like 24-13. It was a week 2 game as well in 2012 that the 49ers lost. In 2018, the 49ers opened their season at US Bank Stadium. That was the first game that Jimmy Garoppolo played after signing his new contract, and it went south for San Francisco. They ran out of healthy linemen or got really close to it in that game. It was Mike McGlinchey's career debut, and he had to end up playing right guard instead of right tackle because of all the injuries in that football game for San Francisco. And then they went there in 2023, and they lost on Monday Night Football in the game that I'm talking about. And, you had the crazy Jordan Addison play, and you had the Brock Purdy concussion, and that likely happened before his performance went south. So San Francisco is going to have to find a way to handle the Vikings on the road this time, and a big part of that is handling Justin Jefferson. Are you going to shadow him with Charvarius Ward? Remember, the Jets did not throw in Charvarius Ward's direction last game. They were throwing to the left, Ward's lined up to the right from the offense's point of view, and that's how that went. But Justin Jefferson will line up all over the formation. They're going to be looking for favorable matchups. And I'm guessing the 49ers will mix in man and double coverage and bracketing with some zone coverage against Jefferson. But Nick Sorensen's going to have to try to be one step ahead of Wes Phillips, who is Minnesota's offensive coordinator. And Kevin O'Connell has a big hand in the offense as well. He's the head coach, and he coached under Sean McVay, who obviously coached under Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan. So all of this is related. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is the GM of the Minnesota Vikings. He was in the 49ers front office before. So Minnesota is trying to build a team like the 49ers. They obviously got a good glowing review on Sam Darnold. He's now their quarterback, but let's listen into their offensive coordinator, Wes Phillips, talk about this football game.
They have a lot of great players. Number one, they've got a good sound scheme. They're physical. They're athletic. They've got good players on every level of the defense. Really great players on every level of the defense. They're coached well. They play hard. Really, it's going to be a big challenge for us. It was a challenge last year playing these guys, and I expect nothing less. I mean, it's a team that's been in championship games and Super Bowls, and for good reason. They're good on both sides, and we're going to have to. Our defense is doing great, but they've got a good offense too. So it's really, they're just a good football team. So we've got our work cut out for us.
That is courtesy the Vikings. Hearing from Wes Phillips, who is going to be coordinating that offense along with Sam Darnold, and obviously Kevin O'Connell is a good mind in that regard as well. But how the 49ers handled Justin Jefferson, to me, that's a nice early season test for a secondary that showed a lot last week against Aaron Rodgers. We saw Isaac Yiadom with a big fourth down pass breakup to seal things. We saw Deommodore Lenoir get his hand in there on Garrett Wilson to force an interception. The ball bounced to Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. We saw Charvarius Ward essentially dissuade Aaron Rodgers and the Jets from testing his side of the field. Safety position didn't have any major lapses except for the free play lapse where Jair Brown got beaten by Alan Lazard, but I don't think that Sam Darnold has nearly the same reputation as Aaron Rodgers on those free plays. The key for San Francisco here is going to be play this at least to a draw. Don't let Minnesota's front, which was so good in pass protection, bully you up front. Make sure that you slow down Aaron Jones. We saw big improvement in the 49ers run defense already in week one. This is going to be another test because Minnesota's tried to get that run defense better. And then you could try to play the game against Sam Darnold on your terms. And playing on your terms means you mix up coverages and you find a way to limit Justin Jefferson as much as possible. I don't think that Minnesota has a huge amount of weapons offensively. I think that Jones is a weapon. I obviously think that Justin Jefferson's a weapon. They also have a fullback. They're one of the few teams that runs with a fullback. That's CJ Ham. So, and he's not a Kyle Juszczyk. He's not as much of a receiving threat as Kyle Juszczyk, but it's still worth mentioning that they do diversify their run game in a way of a team that you would expect from somebody like Kevin O'Connell, who was under Sean McVay with the Rams, who is related to the Shanahan tree just through that extended family of coaches. The Vikings also added Josh Oliver, who was with Baltimore at the tight end position. Josh Oliver is actually a San Jose State product, interestingly enough. So look out for him because Josh is, he's an athletic tight end. If you play tight end for the Ravens, you're usually a multi-purpose guy. They like having a lot of tight ends on that football team. So you could see a little bit of the offensive vision in that regard. J.J. McCarthy, the Michigan product who played under Jim Harbaugh, won the national title. He was supposed to be in the mix for quarterback of the Vikings, but he had knee surgery. His season is done. So the top two in the Vikings quarterback depth chart are actually former 49ers in Sam Darnold and then Nick Mullins. Both of those guys trying to throw the football to Justin Jefferson and company. So don't forget Nick Mullins. He was already with the Vikings last year. And don't forget about Sam Darnold, who's got an amazing arm. He's always been really physically talented. I think, somebody in the comment section was mentioning that he had worked with Jordan Palmer, Carson Palmer's brother, eliminating some of the hitch from his delivery. If the 49ers are winning up front, they can test to see how much Darnold has eliminated that hitch, because habits, old habits can come back whenever you're under pressure. They usually do come back when you're under pressure. But if Darnold has a lot of time to throw, then we'll hear about him doing the kind of stuff that he did in training camp and he did against the Jets when he was airing it out downfield, high average depth of target, and a lot of happiness from a receiver like Justin Jefferson on some of those aggressive throws. All right, I'm ready to answer a few questions here. 49ers Q&A as they get ready to take on the Minnesota Vikings. Is Darnold a weapon? Absolutely. He can move. And he can throw on the run. He's not a guy that's just going to sit back there and do only what he needs to by the book. He's able to go above and beyond. There's a reason why he was a top 5 draft pick. How do the 49ers stop Jefferson? I don't think that you can stop Jefferson. I think you could try to slow him down. They didn't face Jefferson last year. He was still hurt when San Francisco rolled through town. So when you look at Justin Jefferson and you want to appraise the situation realistically, he's going to get his. He's going to get a few catches. You got to keep the lid on, though. You can't let him explode in this football game. So I think you mix up coverages, you mix up blitzes. You got to make sure you get to the quarterback. You got to make sure you get to the root of the issue first, because if you're only focused on covering one of the best in the game, if not the best in the game, you're probably going to send too many resources that way. And this is the NFL. The Vikings have other guys who can beat you. I think Kyle Shanahan in one of these clips talked about Justin Jefferson. Maybe it's this one. Let's test it out.
The way you can cut with his speed, there's not an angle he can't really run at full speed and drop his weight. He's also fearless in how he plays. His hands are as good as anyone. I don't know him personally, but from what I've heard, people have been with him. I've heard he's one of the smartest players that people I know say they've been with. He's the full package.
He is the full package. The 49ers have their work cut out for them when they face Minnesota on Sunday. Hell of an atmosphere there. I love that stadium. Now, it is artificial turf, and it is a long flight away. That's what Nick Bosa said. But you can get the Juicy Lucy, the burger from Matt's, and I think at multiple different places in Minneapolis. It's the burger. The patty's got molten cheese inside of it. It's not bad. It really isn't. I went to Submarine Center in West Portal. I got to find this and show you guys the sandwich of the day. This was yesterday because I was out there. I was at the Juvenile Justice Center for the hearing of the Ricky Pearsall incident defendant. And since I was out there, I was like, hey, I'm going to stop by Submarine Center in West Portal, and I'm going to get some good footage of the Atomic Sandwich. Many different kinds of meat. Really, really good. Old school San Francisco place. I'm going to get this up here. We're going to call it Sandwich of the Day. And we're all going to get hungry, even though I've already eaten. I ate a truly Mediterranean tonight in the Mission. So this was the Atomic. It had, as I said, multiple different types of meat on it. You add the avocado at the very end, and you finish it up. Maybe you get a little cross section here too as they put it into the wrapping. Now, as he wraps it, I make my pan to the wall, and I always like to try to feature places that have a little bit of a 49ers theme. There you go, on the wall at Submarine Center. Here, we could fast forward. There's Montana, there's Young. You've got all kinds of stuff on the wall. So West Portal, that's where you got to go. Is Banks starting? I would think so. I mean, he's limited in practice this week. Wait, guys, we don't know yet. It's Wednesday right now. You're not going to know until later in the week. They weren't sure about McCaffrey until Monday morning when they ruled him out last time, which was a surprise, but these decisions are not made on Wednesday. So let's just get into the rhythm this season of not, pushing injury questions too hard on Wednesday when the game is not till Sunday. Frank agrees. Submarine Center is really good. No problem. Bo? I don't think that Spencer Burford looked bad at all. I think he looked solid in some limited reps the other day at the left guard position. I think that's a good call out. Is Purdy better than Darnold? Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Brock Purdy's elite. He's one of the best in the game. Darnold's got a lot of potential. So don't rule out Darnold being a good quarterback. He was last week, and now he faces a much tougher 49ers defense. Gonna be fun. All right, gave you guys a sandwich of the day, answered a few questions. Everybody, thanks for watching. We will talk to you very soon.